Hi there, I'm Amanda Castor with Material Girl Quilts. Today I'm going to share with you how to make a plus quilt. And the pattern I'm using is created with fat quarters. And I'm going to show you a number of different finished quilt sizes. The one that is hanging behind me uses 20 fat quarters and finishes at 64 inches by 76 inches. Now this pattern is really very simple to make, and it's just simple patchwork. It's just a matter of placing your squares to get them in the plus formations. Now I would like to show you my preferred method for cutting the squares from each fat quarter. And the number of fat quarters you need will depend on the finished quilt size, but from each fat quarter you will need to cut a total of 16 4.5 inches square. And as you know, fat quarters should be at least 18 inches wide and between 21 to 22 plus inches in length. Now I prefer to cut against the width of the fabric, so from the 18-inch width, and I'm going to cut 4.5-inch strips from each of those from the widths. So I will cut a total of 4.5-inch strips. And if you need, before you start cutting, if you need to make sure that you have a straight edge to begin with, go ahead and do that. But my fat quarter was cut nice and straight. Oh, that was not 4.5, that was 3.5. Now the reason I like to cut it the width of the fabric is so that instead of the length is that you will end up with this scrap. So it's a decent sized scrap that you can put in your scrap bin and use for something else in a later project. Now once you have all of your 4.5-inch strips cut, you can lay them on top of each other and then subcut those into 4.5-inch squares. And if your fat quarters are exactly 18 inches in width, then you will not have any scrap left over from this cut. And it is exactly, oh, there's a little bit extra there. So here are my 16 4.5-inch squares from one fat quarter. Again, you'll repeat this process for the number of fat quarters needed depending on the finished quilt size you're making. Just make sure that you cut 16 4.5-inch squares from each fat quarter. Now the fun part of laying out all of your squares to create your plus according to the quilt layout diagram begins. Now again, for the 64-inch by 76-inch size that I made, you will lay your squares out into 16 squares per row for a total of 19 rows according to the layout diagram so that you can see where the plus formations are created in your layout. Then once you're happy with your layout, it's just a simple matter of piecing your squares together into rows and then sewing the rows together to complete the quilt top. I suggest that you press your seams per each row in alternating directions. So in other words, all of the odd rows press to the right, all of your even rows press to the left so that your seams will nest nicely and your pluses will line up perfectly. Now as I said, there's other sizes available with this pattern. If you'd like to make a 40-inch by 48-inch baby size quilt, you will need 8 fat quarters. Or to make a 52-inch by 64-inch quilt, you will need 14 fat quarters. Now, as you will notice when you go to lay out your squares in the plus formations, that you will have extras left over. And here are the extras that were left over from my quilt. This just gives you some more variety and ease when laying out the pluses in your quilt. Gives you some room to move, and as you can see, it's not a lot of extra fabric that's left over. This is another great beginner-friendly pattern that I think an experienced quilter of any level would enjoy making as well. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please make sure you click the like button and subscribe so you don't miss any tutorials going forward. And again, there's a link to a printable PDF pattern for this quilt in the video description below. Thank you so much for watching, and see you next time.